Hello friends, Tanya here with a video featuring the Spellbinders November 2021 Club Kits. I'm using the Clear Stamp, the Glimmer, and the APG of the month, and they are amazing this month. I say that every month, but they're always amazing. This is the pop-up 3D Vignette Christmas tree. And there are so many gorgeous elements to this die set. There's 3 trees, some presents, some bows for the tops of the presents. And look at all these cute presents that I threw together quick. And they also have these little tiny ornaments. They come in groups of 3 and they're 2 pieces so that you can cut out a metallic little topper and the different decorative ornaments and glue them together in this amazing way. Here is the back of the APG handout, or excuse me, product, and it shows you how to assemble that pop-up. Next, we have the Glimmer of the month. This is called Curved Christmas Borders, and this is similar to the April 2021 Glimmer of the month. It will coordinate with it. It's got several plates that do a design and a couple of places that do words and dies. Next we have the Around the Holidays stamp set. This has several curved stamped elements and a coordinating die with all of these different gifts that you can die cut from the stamped image. Here's how that edge lines up, and there are 7 different gift packages that you can die cut from that sentiment strip, or excuse me, from that image strip. I have a long video for you today. It is almost 26 minutes long. We're going to start out with a Christmas gift tag, and I decided to use the sentiment from the Glimmer of the Month kit to add a little sentiment directly to the tag. Just because I thought that this looked like a garland on the tree. And I just took a little strip of polished brass foil and taped the sentiment and the foil to the tree that I'd already die cut. I thought about glimmering it first and then die cutting it, but I didn't have a big enough piece of paper. There was no wiggle room on that piece of cardstock to do the glimmering first. So you can see here that my first run through was not perfect. I actually didn't have the foil far enough down underneath the plate because it didn't foil all of one of the words. You can double foil if you use the hinge technique and you don't let the ends wiggle. It's better to have 2 points taped down. And so I had to redo it, and it looks much better the second time. Now I am going to take the smallest of the trees in that die set, and I'm going to take the beautiful little filigreed part, and I'm going to tape together both pieces so that we'll get a fine detail piece to adhere to the center of our gift tag. I'm just going to tape those pieces together and then tape it to some cardstock that's a different color of green. And I have a accordion file holder that I put all of my different colors of cardstock scraps into. I call it my file of rainbow scraps. And then I just dig through and get what I want. I don't even know what the names of those cardstocks are, but it's convenient to have all of them, all of the greens grouped together, all the blues grouped together, etc. Now I'm going to use a little of the Barely Art Precision Glue to adhere this to the front of this gift tag. And I'm just adding little dots of glue all over. I had trimmed off the trunk because I didn't want the trunk on there. I didn't like how that looked. And I am thinking this is adorable. I could have stopped right there, but I decided to add these dots that get die cut that coordinates with the largest of the tree dies. And I cut those out. And I did debate putting a metallic cardstock behind that, but I thought, why waste? We'll use that first tree that didn't work out well. And since this is a perfectly symmetrical die, you could flip that around so that you have the nice or the best side showing on the back. I am not going to do that this time, but you could. Then I took this gift package background piece that is part of the pop-up vignette, and I decided to add that on the bottom of the tree so it can hold all of our presents in a good organized fashion. As you can see here, I taped together the different pieces of the colored cardstock to form our gifts, and then adhered the bows to the tops or on top of those gifts. Now I'm just going to add them to this panel, and you can see where they go by the embossed detail lines. It goes pretty quickly. Just going to add a little glue behind each one, match it up to its spot on that little panel, and move on to the next one. The great part about liquid glue is it gives you some wiggle time so that if you need to adjust and slip it over or under another package, it works out great. There's also some little die cut areas where you can tell that an ornament is supposed to rest. And we're going to use some of those ornaments that I made earlier. These ornaments were really easy to create, and they adhere perfectly on here. Now, it probably would have been better if I had had some green and some red Christmas bulbs, but I just had the red ones, and I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to adhere them where they would fit over the little die cut background, and I'm going to add one of these other bulbs on the packages also. I decided to turn it the opposite direction so that more of it would be overlapping a contrasting colored ornament. Now I'm just going to glue this directly to the tree trunk. Try to get that as lined up as I can using my grid mat. And then I'll flip it over and adhere the other Christmas tree to the back of it to add a little stability and to add some contrasting color or some contrast behind those dots. I did decide to just go with it with the foiling on the inside there. You can see it a little bit through the dots, but that's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm sure whoever gets that will not even notice. Now, the top of the tree has a little dot right in the very top, and I want to hang that gift tag from that, or I want to thread some twine through there. So I'm going to take my pokey tool and poke a hole through that, and I've threaded some linen thread through that hole on a needle, and I'm going to trim that, and I'll tie a knot in the top. I thought about tying the knot on the bottom, but I'm just going to do it at the top. That way we have a beautiful gift tag. So that's project number 1. We're going to move on to project number 2. So I'm going to do an A7 size or a 5x7 card, and I have already done a few of the layers that I'm going to create, and I'm going to show you how I made them. I had already die cut them from these scraps of paper, and you can see how that lines up perfectly. So if you wanted to just use a hinge method and tape the foil on there, you could do it that way. However, I am going to show you how I did it originally. I laid down the foil. I put my plate on top of the foil and secured it on both sides so that it doesn't flip and it doesn't shift while you're doing your glimmering. I again thought I might try to line that up. You can see that you could do this if you could make sure you have it taped and lined up correctly. But I'm just going to move it back up to the top, and that is a 2-inch by 6-inch long piece of Glimmer hot foil. I am even going to take a piece of white cardstock. We're going to use this loopy, lacy edge foil plate, and we're going to foil that also. And I happen to be using the Aura foil on these. I don't remember which foil comes with the Glimmer of the Month kit this month. I wish I did. Okay, I paused and looked, and it's the polished brass Glimmer hot foil that comes with this month's kit. One of my all-time favorites. Aura is right up there. So here are the first two that I foiled just now. I did it on a green paper and a red paper, and they foiled beautifully. Now your results may vary depending on the foil you use. Some of them foil better than others. Aura, polished brass, excuse me, and gold all do fantastic, as does Prism, which is a silvery iridescent color also. I am going to use the coordinating die that cuts the edge here, and I've just taped that down. I'm being very careful to not get that taped over any of the glimmering. It does matter which side you put that on. Now, if you put this on the cardstock above, it will still cut it out, but it works best below on this particular pattern, or above. It just depends which direction you are deciding to do this on. It does die cut just over 5.5 inches. There is that beautiful loopy lacy pattern. I'm just using I think this is 80 pound. Yes, 80 pound white cardstock. It is a super smooth white cardstock. That is what works the best for foiling. But any of the fine detail glimmer foils or Glimmer hot foil plates are going to foil the best regardless of the paper that you use. When you have a more solid Glimmer hot foil image, it does matter more which papers you're using. So here we are nesting all of these different layers together to create the front of my card, and I get to the end here and decide that I need a little something more. So I pull out a piece of white cardstock again and the opal Glimmer hot foil, and I am going to foil a solid pattern of this. So I've done my first foiling. I had trimmed off the extra with my paper trimmer, and I left the foil in place. I didn't peel it off between. Oh, here's a quick hint. So I had used the same Glimmer foil to do the sentiment. I didn't foil those at the same time. I just laid that foil down and used it to create my sentiment. So now I have foiled this Christmas botanical pattern on here 3 times without removing the foil. It stuck on there just fine. I was able to tape directly onto the foil. I'd never tried that before. I think that's a pretty awesome tip for background building. I may have to do that again because it worked so beautifully. You see exactly where your previous stuff was. You can tape it directly to the foil and not have to worry about pulling any of the previous foiling off. I'm just so impressed. I have to see if it works with other colors. Since opal is so tone on tone, we'll see. We'll do that in the future. So now I'm just going to take each of these layers and glue them down with little Barely Art precision glue. And I thought this was going to be a whole lot bulkier than it is. It is really not that bulky. And I'm just alternating the green, the white, the red, the green, the white, the red, with white in between each of the different colors. I love that Merry Christmas that fits just right in that curve. That looks beautiful. I am so impressed. I thought this was going to look like a very simple, plain-ish card. Even with the glimmering, I didn't think it was going to be as wowing as it is. It turned out so good, you guys. Cannot believe it. And these are just quick layers and quick, okay, foiling is not always very quick, and there is a lot of foiling on this card, but it really didn't take that long. So then I bring in my paper trimmer. I want to trim this down to 4.5 by 6.5. And I'm trying to get all of the edges all nicely even on the one side here. Now the Merry Christmas foils pretty close to the end of that whoosh, so I had a little trouble there. We're just going to go with it. I flipped over the cardstock so I still had the nice even top, and trimmed that down to 4.5. We're going to trim this to 6.5, and that took off most of that background foiling that I did. I probably didn't have to foil that so many times, but it's still worth it because I found out that you could do it the way I did it. Now we're going to take a 5x7 card base. It starts out as a 10x7 piece of cardstock that I score at 5 inches and then crease well. I was going to adhere this directly to the card base without any extra dimension, but ultimately decided to add some coaster blank behind it because I just wanted a little more dimension. I'm kind of addicted to dimension, if you haven't noticed. Yeah. So I'm going to adhere those with the Barely Art Precision Glue, and then I'm going to adhere that directly to the card base, and that is almost the end. I do decide to do a little more to the inside. Just centering that on the card base, I'm going to use my Misty to add a little weight to that. And look at that. It's gorgeous. It doesn't even need any gems or any additional die cuts. So then I take out the Gifts of Christmas Sentiments Glimmer hot foils. These were released in August or September of this year. Handy dandy, love them. I took a bigger piece. I think this is a 5.5 by 4.25 inch piece of white cardstock, and I glimmered that on with the Aura glimmer foil. And then this is a sneak peek. This is the Fluted Classics Squares dies. These come out do they come out November 9th? November 9th or November 20th. One of those two. Very soon, to be honest. I'm going to adhere that to the inside of the card. I'm just again doing a little Barely Art Precision Glue on the inside of that, or on the back of that, and I'm going to adhere that inside. Why, you ask, do I glimmer it on a separate piece of cardstock? Because then I don't risk messing up my card base. On to the next card. This time we're going to do a slimline card. I'm starting out by doing some ink blending with Rustic Wilderness and Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide inks. And I have taken these 4.25 by 9 inch panels because we're going to die cut these out. And I'm ink blending. I want kind of a gradient effect, and I know this looks terrible. It is not smoothly blended at all, but I promise it'll be beautiful in the end. And I am purposely starting on one end with my freshly loaded sponge and working my way up. That way I get that bit of a gradient effect without too much effort. It did take me a couple of minutes to get these ink blended, and then I heat set them with my heat tool so that my embossing powder will only stick where I want it to. So I've taken one of the curvy image dies. I keep wanting to say die and mean a stamp. And I'm inking it up with a clear watermark and embossing ink. So now I'm going to flip that paper around, and since these snowflakes are not directional, I can do that. And I'm continuing that swoop across the entire page. Now I decide to do the heat embossing on this piece before I move on to stamping the next one. I'm going to do 3 rows of swoopy snowflakes in white satin pearl embossing powder to create a subtle snowy effect. And I just keep using the Misty to line those ends up and re-stamping it to continue the pattern across the cardstock. To have had brighter snowflakes, I could have done the embossing in white or done the white satin pearl embossing before I did the ink blending. And either of those would have worked. This looks good to me, but it might have been nicer to have the white showing a little more. So we have one more row here. I am just figuring out how to place that. Inking up, I decided to try just inking once, and that looks beautiful too. And that tends to preserve the fine details better than if you stamp twice with some really fine detail stamps. If it's a bigger, blockier image, not a big deal. If it's a fine detail image, it really is better to only stamp once, especially if you have a well re-inked or a juicy ink pad. So we're going to move on to the green panel, and this time we're going to heat emboss with gold embossing powder, and I am using the Ornament image swoop this time, and that means it's a directional stamp, so you can't flip the paper around to continue the pattern. I do let it hang out of the MISTI to continue that row, and it does give me a little squished, not perfect image for the first ornament on the second part of that panel or that pattern, but I can live with that, especially with the way we're going to use this panel in the long run. Just going to add that last bit of embossing powder, and then I decide to bring out my mica distress spray stains. I don't know if you can get these anymore because they're a limited product. However, they're fantastic, and I'm going to use them since I have them. On the Salvage Patina panel, I'm using Frosted Juniper, and on the green one, I'm using Tree Lot. And I was a bit surprised that it was Frosted Juniper that matched the Salvage Patina. They add this beautiful shimmer and depth of color. They're amazing. If you were able to get your hands on them, please use the heck out of these things. I imagine we're going to get more next year, and maybe it'll be different colors. But either way, we buy these products, we need to use them. Then on to the next piece of this. We are going to use the Be Bold Block Merry Christmas die. This die cuts out the word Christmas to fit exactly over a slimline card front. That is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. Now this is actually the second time I'm adhering this to a card base because I was being very bold and I went directly onto a white slimline card base. I'm just alternating the colors, and for some reason I forgot to put the T on the first one. I got to this point and I adhered the M to my card and said, oh blank. And I tried to peel it apart. Yeah, I did manage to peel the M off of that first card front, but it left such a mess on the card base that I could not use it. So this is take 2. Normally you'd be able to get 2 cards out of these 2 pieces that I had die cut. You could fill in all of the negative space with other paper. However, this looks fantastic just like this because our words or our letters are all so interesting. And I did take that over to my paper trimmer and trim off any excess off the top and bottom very carefully. This die set also includes the word Merry, and I used the negative space to get the placement just right. And that made it so much faster and easier. So I'm just going to use a little Barely Art Precision Glue again here to adhere those to the card front, using the negative space for my spacing. And I did use the gold mirror cardstock from Spellbinders to create the Merry. I happen to have a scrap of that in my metallics envelope. I have some envelopes on my die cutting table that have a variety of specialty papers, so I don't have to go digging. I can just look in my little scrap bags and pull something out. Super convenient, saves me a lot of time. Now the R on this negative is up, the second R is upside down. So I'm going to carefully remove the negative here, and then I will add my last R, and that will complete this card front. I did go ahead and do some glimmering for the inside using one of the newer sentiments for the Christmas stuff, and that turned out great. I love how those details add such shimmer. So here's a quick recap of all of the projects I made today. Let me know which one you liked the best or which technique you found the most helpful. If you haven't subscribed to the clubs of the month, it would be a really good idea to head over and check out the total package. That is the best deal. And if you aren't subscribed to my channel, now's a great time to do that. I'd really appreciate it. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. It helps me. And check that description box below for all of the supplies I used today. Until next time, bye-bye.